Welcome to another segment of Joe and the Fat Man. Joe Smelter, Kyle Fatman Golick, Jay Hallahan with you. As always, we're recording this Monday night, which means that we're several hours removed from what I would say is probably the most boring weekly press conference James Franklin has given thus far in the 2025 season. He didn't give any insight on the depth chart the way he did before Nevada week one. He didn't give any injury updates the way he did before FIU with Zariah Fisher and Zion Tracy, which is very good news, by the way, since Penn State seems to be more healthy now than it was before the start of the season. And of course, the fact that Penn State is playing Villanova isn't going to inspire a lot of intrigue. So, fellas, what were your takeaways from Franklin's presser that you saw?
I think James is more on the line of trying to tweak things amongst the his personnel. And what I mean by that is, we hit it on it in the last segment with Drew. Maybe overthinking was the word, and just living more in the present and go game plan. He said the same thing about Nick, and Nick is such a dynamic athlete, Joe. We've seen him just go supernova, and he shows why he's so special. I do agree with you. I think Nick sometimes goes for the home run too often instead of, hey, I have a crease here. Let me try to do that and try to do something special. I mean, running backs always have that. It's a good trait to have, but sometimes you got to get them to also be disciplined a little bit there. I really think one of the things that I feel that he liked was, even though he loved everything that Khalil did from a blocking perspective, he started to hint at that Luke Reynolds might be the tight end one based off of what he was able to do in a vertical game, which was a nice pleasant surprise there. I really think the other thing is, it was really, we learned a little bit more about Chaz Coleman. He was like, hey, he was great on, he had his first sack, strip, and fumble recovery. So that's always great to be able to do those things. I think the kid's going to be special, and I think that's what he was getting at. I really think, you know, um, the biggest takeaway for me came within, James talking about the linebackers and safeties. Like, he feels he has depth there. I feel after Saturday there's depth myself at the defensive tackle position. But James talked about even beyond DeLuca, beyond Amari Campbell and Tony Rojas. He's really liking what Anthony Specca's doing. He really likes the depth there, but he didn't get too much in the linebackers. He pivoted to the safety because King Mack had a phenomenal game, Joe. He was among the leaders in tackles. This is a very, if they're deep at safety and they feel good at linebacker, and they're starting to pick up with it on Knowles' defense, which James said that he wishes they would be a little bit more faster with. I think they're on time on installing the defense. Again, I agree with you. There was not a whole lot, but there were these little nuggets that I was pointing out that I feel were paramount from that presser today.
I just want to touch on the Chaz Coleman play real quick. I kind of had a wait and see approach with Chaz Coleman. I know that everyone was really excited about him during fall camp, but to see that strip sack play, that's early on. I know it's against FIU, and hopefully we get some big ones against the Big Ten opponents that Penn State will obviously face. But that's right there with play of the year candidate in my book.
And here, this is the one thing, and I'll dovetail off of that, Jay, on that play. The kid came in when, Joe? End of May, June, and he's
Yeah,
getting
that would have been the end of May, but he didn't start practicing until the fall.
yeah. He started fall practice, and then in a game had an impact play like that. That's unreal, and he's being thought of. And they loved what Zariah did in his limited snaps. I think he led the team with 7 pressures against FIU, right, Joe?
He did in 15 pass rush snaps. He had 7 pressures, so that's a pressure on about half of them. And Franklin said that Zariah Fisher played a little bit more than he would have liked to, which kind of confused me because you have solid depth at defensive end that got a lot of experience against Nevada. Like why did Zariah Fisher need to play 30 snaps when you have Chaz Coleman and Jalen Harvey? But yeah, to your point, Zariah Fisher was very good.
And you hit another hit reinforced my point about Franklin scripting too much in these games here. You know, it's funny. He's sitting here, telling his players, "I need you to get up and just go play." James, maybe you just need to simplify things a little bit more. I mean, if you're sitting here like, man, I can't believe he played more snaps than we wanted him to. That's a good thing. I don't know if there's any, I don't think he's meant it to be bad, but it's like, I don't like that comment was like, to me, when I heard him say that, I was like, this is a guy that you are anticipating to start opposite of Deny. You have a lot riding on because you lost Granville for a long-term injury, and you got a bunch of promising true freshmen that look, if they're as good as advertised, then that's a great situation you're in. I thought that was fantastic of Fish to be able to do what he did on Saturday. Like I said, I just think James sometimes overthinks it himself. And so that can also rub off on the players as well. Maybe they're overthinking on the field instead of just playing. And maybe that's what James is trying to get across to them is this is something I'm working on. You need to work on it too as a quarterback and running back.
Yeah, and something else from the press conference. This is on the offensive side that I thought was pretty interesting. It was an analytical football question asked by Thomas Frank Carr of On Free Sports, whose forte is asking James about the X's and O's. And I think anytime he asks a question, that adds a different element to the press conference, which as a beat reporter I appreciate. But this week, T. Frank asked Franklin about to follow up on a conversation last year about Penn State's deep ball philosophy, which Franklin has stated when Penn State goes deep, they ever won it. Obviously, the ideal scenario would be catching the ball and having a big play. But if that's not going to happen, Franklin wants the ball to be underthrown, so maybe you could have a pass interference call. This is the answer that maybe raised the most eyebrows of anything in the press conference. I watched Landon Tangwall, friend of the program, his review of it done after. He said he disagreed with Franklin, and I agree with Landon in that it confuses me that you would run a play without thinking about the scenario being to catch the ball. Like, why even think about anything else? And for a quarterback like Drew Aller, who we just talked about, what he thinks mentally, and I think one of Drew's weaknesses is that he hasn't taken enough risk. I don't know if that's the best way to instill confidence. I think that's just kind of overthinking it. It's like throw the ball and hope you can make a big play.
So friend of Joe's and friend of obviously the brand here, Corey Geiger for years was on James to, hey, you need to throw deep, you need to open it up. And he had a nice celebration tweet. So shout out to Corey to finally get James to cave on that. I'm with you, Joe. I don't see any other team like elite team and I'm gonna use Ohio State and I'm gonna use Oregon, and I've watched those teams pretty much comprehensively the last few seasons. I've never seen Dylan Gabriel or Bo Nix put it short. I've not seen Kyle McCord even and Will Howard last year throw it short. They put the ball where their guy would get it and let it take off. That you Franklin has a promising quarterback that could be so much more. Let's leverage his arm and I would rather it be thrown incomplete on a deep pass versus thrown short and it could be picked off. Think about how the Big Ten championship game ended. Okay, with Nico Reed picking it off there. I think was it Amari Evans or Trey Wallace?
That was Trey Wallace he was going for.
Okay. if he does it right, and he throws it, and Bill Walsh always says this in finding winning edge, a foot in front of the receiver is where you want it, regardless of where it is. You do your cone, you put it a foot. If you're teaching them to throw it short, that's mind-boggling. Like, that makes sense on why Nico Reed was able to make that pick, because he's throwing sure he's doing exactly what his coach wanted. It's not on Drew. I think it's poor coaching in that manner.
Could you also contribute that to a lot of the? I mean, I saw a couple passes Drew threw, and it looked like they were, basically at the feet of the receiver, and even going back to the Amari Evans play against Notre Dame, the interception.
I very well could.
Yeah.
Very well could. Maybe that's the whole, maybe that was his whole, when Christian Gray picked it off, he probably said he wanted to throw it in the dirt, and there could be merit to it, but he might be trying to see if he saw interference there and try to throw for interference.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing for a penalty, either throw it away and fight another down, or make the right play, make the right throw. I don't, I, for a presser that James really didn't say much, he really gave us a lot of fodder today.
Yeah, and this was too. This was one of the last questions of the press conference. It was after Franklin had talked about the mental game, right, with Drew Aller and Nick Singleton overthinking things at times. And he was right in saying that the week is for thinking about things, analyzing things. Saturday, you just go out there and play. You really can't think too much. But how does that process coincide with even thinking about failure when you're throwing a deep pass? I think it was a golf reporter, I don't know which one it was, that said about Greg Norman, anytime you have the thought of failure, that's a negative. And I think the same could apply for football. So, like most plays, you're going for the best possible outcome. Why do deep passes have to be any different? It just doesn't really make any
It
sense
makes
to me.
zero sense to me, Joe. And I think that was David Faherty.
Mm, yeah. But that's going to do it for segment 2 of Joe and the Fat Man. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Villanova. And yeah, Penn State's going to win this one.